It was Melody's new job party, a cozy little brunch her friends and our family had thrown at a trendy cafe in downtown Asheville. She had just landed a mid-level role at some fast-scaling tech firm, and the table was filled with congratulatory smiles, mimosas, and stories that orbited around her. I sat at the far end of the table by the window. My coffee had gone cold, but I kept stirring it, an old habit that helped me stay grounded. No one really noticed me, because as always, the spotlight belonged to my sister Melody. She sat with her legs elegantly crossed, the sunlight catching the sparkle of her engagement ring and freshly done nails. "Harper," she said loudly across the table, with just enough charm to make it sting, "you're still doing—" "What exactly? Freelancing? At your age?" Before I could answer, she laughed and turned to her friend. "She just can't seem to get a grip on a real career. Like, get a life already." No one else laughed, just Melody, amused by her own jab. Then she added even louder, "Some people just leech off successful ones instead of becoming one." I didn't flinch. I didn't look at her. I just pressed my lips together and kept stirring. My mom mumbled, "Mel, that's enough." But my sister only shrugged. In Melody's world, silence was proof of failure. My dad tried to change the subject. Something about the avocado toast being underseasoned. But her smirk hung in the air like a dare. They all thought I was invisible. But that invisibility had become my sanctuary, and my weapon. They didn't know that I, Harper Jameson, had co-founded Pulse Metrics, one of the fastest-growing analytics firms in the country. And the best part? Melody, my sister, the spotlight. Queen, had just been hired by Pulse Metrics. She had no idea, and I wasn't about to ruin the surprise. I was used to being invisible. It started long before brunches and job parties. I remember my 11th birthday clearly. The cake had just been placed on the table. Candles lit. Everyone gathered around to sing. I was about to make a wish when Melody burst out of the hallway, waving a giant trophy. "She just won the Tri-State Dance Competition," my mom announced proudly, voice louder than the birthday. Song itself. Everyone clapped. Cameras turned. I stood by the cake, candles flickering. No one asked what I wished for. I didn't even blow them out. That was the first time I realized I'd never be the story worth celebrating. Melody was a born performer, bright, bold, always putting on a show. Me? I liked silence. I liked solving puzzles, pulling apart things to understand how they worked. Remotes, toasters, code. That same year, I started writing my first basic algorithm on the used Chromebook Dad gave me. I was hooked. My mom would always say, "Harper could sit in one spot for 6 hours and never make a sound." Dad used to joke, "We've got a firecracker and a flashlight in this house. Guess which is which?" No guessing needed. Melody was the firecracker. I was the quiet beam that nobody noticed, but that always stayed on. As we got older, the roles didn't change. She studied media arts, landed short stints on local TV, built a wellness brand that trended for a hot minute, before collapsing under bad bookkeeping. I went to a small tech college, built systems, graduated with honors. No one in the family even remembered my graduation date. They were busy planning a photo shoot for Melody's product launch. But I wasn't bitter. I just started building in silence. At 29, I partnered with Derek, my old college roommate, and co-founded Pulse Metrics. We coded in coffee shops, pitched at startup expos, survived on ramen and wild ideas. He became the voice of the company. I became the backbone. 3 years later, Pulse Metrics was worth over $100 million. I owned nearly half of it. My name was nowhere to be found. And now? Melody, the sister who never noticed the beam behind the spotlight, had just been hired at my company. The offer letter went out the next morning. Melody Jameson, budget analyst, Pulse Metrics, salary approved, start date, Monday. She had no idea the approval came from me. Only Derek knew the truth, that I wasn't just a technical consultant working remotely. I was a co-founder. From day one, we agreed that only Derek's name would go public. He had the charm, the voice, the ease with people. I preferred the architecture behind the curtain. I'd seen what happened to founders who became faces. Their lives were no longer their own. I didn't need the press, I needed privacy. And control. So, inside Pulsemetrics, I was just Harper, the senior systems lead who worked odd hours and avoided Zoom calls. I only showed up in the office once a week, always after 7 p.m., when the halls were quiet and the espresso machine already cleaned. The rest of the time, I ran our architecture, reviewed departmental budgets, and made executive decisions from behind layers of secure logins. Derek was the one shaking hands and delivering keynotes. He never once slipped about my identity, not even in front of employees. I used to wonder if staying hidden was the right choice. But when I saw Melody walk into the world I'd built, full of pride and ambition, I knew it had been necessary, on I. Her first day, I stayed home. But I logged into the internal camera system, a discreet feature I'd personally coded. From the 9th floor kitchen cam, I saw her pouring coffee, chatting confidently with a co-worker. "This place is wild," she said. "You know, no one's ever seen one of the founders? Some say the second one's just a name on a legal document." I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the first time I'd been called a ghost. That afternoon, Derek FaceTimed me. "She's settling in fast," he said. "Polished, bold. Definitely Melody. Still no clue who's signing off her approvals. You good with this?" "For now," I said. "Let's keep it quiet. If she's here to work, great. If she's here to impress, the truth will sort it out." I didn't want revenge. I wanted insight. How would Melody act when no one clapped? 2. Weeks passed. I stayed invisible. Until one night in the basement server room, checking backup security, I heard the click of heels in the hallway. I stepped out, and there she was. Frozen. "Harper?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing down here?" "Only leadership has access." I smiled calmly. "Guess I have access then." She tilted her head, confused, just as Derek walked out of the adjacent storage room with a folder in hand. "Hey, Harper," he said. "Need your sign-off on the Q3 model before Friday." I took the folder, looked back at Melody. Her eyes didn't blink. She didn't speak, but I could feel it, the crack forming. She'd just seen the first shadow of the truth, and I wanted to see what she'd do with it. That morning, Asheville was wrapped in mist, the kind that made buildings look like they were drawn in pencil. I had just signed off on the Q3 earnings report when my phone buzzed. It was Derek. "Harper," he said with a low chuckle. "I think your sister's starting to connect some dots." I raised an eyebrow. At the same moment, a new email notification slid across my screen. From accounting subject, unmatched signature, HJ42. "Please confirm executive authority." My heart slowed. It was time. Nearly 2 months had passed since Melody officially joined Pulsemetrics. In that time, she had settled in fast, confident in meetings, assertive in budget discussions. I watched quietly, approving her requests, never signing with my full name. Until now. She had come across my internal code, HJ42, next to budget approvals, contract memos, and financial directives. The next morning, I sat in the company cafe, half hidden behind a newspaper, when I heard a familiar voice. "Who's this Harper J anyway?" Melody asked a colleague. "I keep seeing that name in the budget logs. No one seems to know who she is." Her coworker shrugged. "Some say she's like a ghost. Only ever signs major decisions." Melody snorted. "Great, a shadow exec. I don't trust names I can't put a face to." I clenched my mug. She still hadn't learned. Not everything real needs to be loud. 3 days later, she walked straight into finance and requested access to the executive budget log. Thanks to her clearance level, she got it. She opened file after file until she reached the one with my full name, Harper Jameson, co-founder, CTO. With every page, the truth became impossible to ignore. The same sister who once called me a charity case was now staring at the signature that approved her first paycheck. That afternoon, I received a system alert. Internal access flagged. M. Jameson. Executive archive pulled. She had opened the founding documents. Harper Jameson, Derek Lynn, co-founders. 50-50, title, Chief Technical Officer. H. Jameson. I imagined her in that moment, Eyes locked on the screen, expression frozen. Melody didn't explode when shocked. She got quiet. But her eyes, they burned. I arrived at the office earlier than usual just to see it for myself. Sure enough, in the second-floor break room, she stood at the counter, clutching a printed page like it might disappear. "You okay?" I asked softly. She turned, her voice low, tight. "You're the co-founder." I nodded. "How long?" she asked. "Since the beginning. Derek and I started this from a coffee shop on Lexington Avenue. Back when you called me unemployed?" She let out a bitter laugh. "So I've been working under you this whole time?" "You've been doing good work," I said simply. "That's why you're still here." She looked down. I reached into my folder and handed her a draft proposal for a nonprofit data initiative. "We're launching this next quarter, focused on tech access for public schools. You'd be perfect for it." She didn't take the paper. But something in her expression shifted. I turned to leave. She'd need space. But for the first time in years, Melody didn't look at me with disdain. Only quiet reckoning, and maybe a trace of regret. The 5-year anniversary gala for Pulsemetrics was held in a glass-walled venue overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, a modern architectural marvel perched above Asheville's skyline. Inside the guest dressing room, I stood in front of the wall mirror. The black dress I wore was sleek, minimalist. My hair was pinned back with precision, and a soft wash of rose on my lips gave the only hint of color. I didn't dress to be seen. I dressed to belong in the moment, even if it terrified me. There had always been comfort in silence, in shadows, but tonight something was shifting. Derek knocked gently, leaning his head in. "You ready, Harper?" I exhaled. "Not really, but maybe no one ever is." He gave a small smile. "You're not stepping out of the shadows tonight. You're claiming the light you built." We walked onto the stage from the side wings just as the house lights dimmed. The MC's voice echoed through the crystal acoustics. "And now, please welcome the 2 co-founders of Pulsemetrics, Derek Lin and Harper Jamieson." Applause erupted, louder than I expected, sharp, clear, and rising. I walked forward, slowly, intentionally, and then I saw her. Melody stood near the back of the ballroom, her hand wrapped around a champagne flute she hadn't touched. Her eyes wide, frozen mid-expression. She wasn't blinking. Her world, one where I had always been the invisible one, had just split open. I knew that feeling. The moment we signed our first 7-figure contract, and I realized something we built in silence had suddenly become real, undeniable. Derek spoke first. He told the story of how Pulsemetrics began. 2 friends and 2 laptops in a tiny studio apartment, coding through storms and deadlines, betting everything on a smarter way to read the world's data. People laughed at the right moments, nodded at the milestones. Then he turned to me and offered the mic. The room quieted. I stepped forward. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't behind a firewall or a forwarded approval code. I was simply present. I took a slow breath, grounding myself in the moment. "Hi, everyone," I said into the mic, voice steadier than I expected. "I'm Harper Jamieson, and I guess, for many of you, this is the first time you've actually seen me." Soft wave of laughter rolled through the room, not mocking, but warm, surprised, respectful. "I'm not great at public speaking," I continued. "Honestly, I never thought I'd be standing here, but 5 years ago, Derek and I had just 2 things, a worn-out couch and an idea. We believed that technology, if built right, could empower people, not replace them." I paused, eyes scanning the crowd, and then I found her. Melody, still standing near the back wall, her champagne glass now resting on a nearby table. Her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. Her eyes locked on me, not blinking. She was trying to figure out how the sister she used to dismiss had built the stage she was now standing in. "I know I'm not the public face of Pulsemetrics," I said gently. "That's been by choice, but tonight, I felt like I owed you more than just numbers behind a screen. I owed you my presence, not for recognition, but out of gratitude." Applause rose again. firmer this time. I gave a small nod of thanks and stepped back, returning the mic to the MC. As the lights shifted from the stage to the dinner floor, I headed toward the buffet, hoping to retreat into a quiet corner like I always did, but it wasn't possible. With every step, someone stopped me. "You're Harper? I thought you were a myth. We weren't even sure you were real." Legend-level stealth, seriously. I smiled, offered a few polite replies, but my mind drifted back to Melody. I turned to look toward the pillar where she had stood. Empty. She was gone. I didn't know when she'd left, or how much she'd heard. But I felt it. Something subtle, like a pressure change in the room, an absence, where for the first time, I had hoped for a presence. That night, back in my apartment, I kicked off my heels and sank into the couch. My place was quiet, too quiet after a night like that. My phone buzzed nonstop for hours, messages poured in, from engineers, investors, even my parents. "We're so proud of you, Harper. What a moment. You deserve this." I smiled, replied where it felt personal, deleted the ones that felt like bandwagon praise, but none from Melody. No text, no missed call, not even a congrats. I opened the livestream replay of the gala on the Pulsemetrics site, fast-forwarded to the part where I stepped up to speak, paused, watched myself take the mic. I didn't press play. I just stared at the still frame. In that spotlight, what did Melody see? A stranger? Or the little sister she used to roll her eyes at, calling her boring and obsessed with spreadsheets? 2 days later, I went into the office earlier than usual, not to approve contracts, not for system updates, just to finish something personal. In a drawer in the 11th floor conference room, I kept a small walnut box. It had traveled with me since college, through apartments, offices, and server rooms. Inside, I placed 3 things: a navy linen notebook, a black fountain pen, and a handwritten card. It had taken me over an hour to write, not because the words were hard, but because I wanted them to feel true. "Melody, thank you for what you've contributed to Pulsemetrics so far. You're talented, smart, and I believe you'll go far. I'm proud to work with you, even if we began in silence. Harper, no sister. No from your sibling. Just facts. And a choice." I sealed the card inside the notebook and handed the box to the internal mail assistant with one simple instruction: "Deliver this to Melody Jameson. No sender." I didn't expect a reply. Didn't need one. It wasn't an olive branch. It was just a door, quiet, unlocked. She could choose whether or not to walk through. The rest of the week passed in silence. No message from Melody. No email, no thank you note, just space, but I started noticing something else. She no longer leaned back in meetings with arms crossed and eyes half interested. She came in early, took detailed notes, asked smart, deliberate questions. Her voice, once tuned for performance, had settled into something steadier. One afternoon, I stood quietly just outside a conference room as she presented a revised budget strategy for an AI initiative that had gone over projections. She walked through cost forecasts and adjusted modeling like she'd built the system herself. Her tone was calm, clear. Her posture no longer screamed, "Notice me." It said, "I came to contribute. I didn't walk in." I just stood in the hallway, hands in my coat pockets, and nodded once, to myself. The following week, HR circulated a staff-wide announcement. Proposal submitted by Melody Jameson. Title, Lift as You Lead, Internal Sponsorship Initiative. Was a plan to support junior staff, especially women in non-traditional tech roles, by launching mentorship circles and quarterly workshops hosted by department leads. At the bottom, under Inspiration, she had written in italics, "Inspired by the quiet mission of Harper Jameson." I read the proposal 3 times, slowly, letting each word settle. I wasn't looking for recognition. But somehow that line made the weight I didn't know I'd been carrying feel lighter. That afternoon, I stepped into the break room at my usual time. Melody stood by the counter, pouring hot water into the electric kettle. She was alone, no spotlight, no audience. When she turned and saw me, we both paused. No sharp edges in her eyes this time. No tension in her shoulders. No armor. Just a quiet awareness. She gave a slight nod, and for the first time, I didn't see her as the sister who once mocked me for being invisible. I saw someone listening. I was about to walk past her, just a regular moment in a quiet afternoon, when Melody spoke. "The pen is beautiful," she said, her voice soft. "And the notebook. I've written a few pages in it already." I turned, surprised but calm. "I'm glad you liked it." She gave a slight nod, staring at the mug in her hands like it held more than tea. "I don't think I ever really understood you," she said after a pause. "Or maybe I just never tried." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Sometimes, silence is the only way to let someone finish. "There's something I want to say," she continued, her voice dipping lower, more sincere than I'd heard in years. "You didn't have to give me a chance here, not after everything I said, but you did, and you never threw it in my face. You didn't try to outshine me, or humiliate me, or make some grand statement." She looked up, eyes uncertain but open. "That says more about who you are than anything I've ever believed about you." For a moment, I didn't see the sister who once interrupted my birthday wish with a trophy. I didn't see the girl who mocked me at brunch in front of the whole family. I saw a woman, slowly unlearning pride, slowly relearning grace. "Don't know if I can make it right," she admitted, the words trembling. "But I'll try." A quiet breath left my chest, the kind you don't realize you've been holding for years. "We don't need to replay the past," I said. "We just begin from now." We stood there a little longer, side by side. No spotlight, no witnesses, just stillness and soft understanding. There were no grand gestures, no movie scene apologies, just truth, finally acknowledged, and that was enough. And somehow, things did change. Melody wasn't the loudest person in the room anymore. She listened more, interrupted less. She let junior voices finish their thoughts, even if they stumbled. She volunteered for the unglamorous work, the budget audits, the spreadsheet cleanups, the behind-the-scenes grind she once mocked. And me? I stopped avoiding my own reflection. I started speaking at technical briefings, took the mic during onboarding sessions, stood in front of interns and told them, not with ego but with clarity, that you don't have to be loud to lead. You just have to know where you're going. One Friday afternoon, as I was packing up to leave, I passed the recognition wall by the elevators. Her name was listed at the top. Q2 top contributor, Melody Jameson. She stood a few feet away, reading it quietly. When our eyes met, she offered a small smile. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on me." I smiled back. "We're just getting started." That Sunday, our family met at our usual brunch spot, a sunny cafe near Pack Square, with chipped wood chairs and the smell of maple syrup lingering in the air. Everything looked the same, but something felt different. Melody showed up a few minutes late. No flashy heels, no makeup, just a white blouse, jeans, and a loosely tied ponytail. She walked up to me and gave a simple nod. I nodded back, no dramatic gesture. Just presence. Later, as my mom rambled on about her tomato garden, Uncle Ron turned to me and grinned. "So Harper, still doing that computer tinkering thing? Must be fun, sitting in front of numbers all day." I smiled. Before I could answer, Melody set her mug down. "Uncle," she said clearly, "Harper is the smartest person I've ever known. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today." The table quieted. She looked straight at me. She taught me something I used to ignore, that real strength doesn't always speak first. It builds, quietly. And when it's ready, it speaks, through actions, not applause. Uncle Ron blinked. My aunt gave a small, thoughtful nod. My mom reached over and gently squeezed my hand. After the meal, as we packed up to leave, Melody stepped beside me, jacket in hand. "You don't have to. Forgive me," she whispered. "But I'm not the same person anymore." I turned to her. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled from a place that wasn't guarded. I know, I said, and I never needed you to apologize. We walked out in silence. But it wasn't. The kind that keeps people apart. It was the kind that allows something new to begin. Later that evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the lights of Asheville blur into the hills. A message from Derek popped up on my screen. Heard. Brunch wasn't half bad today, I replied. Not bad. Let's call it a new beginning. Because sometimes healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives when people finally see each other. Not through old expectations, but through quiet, honest understanding. Melody and I will never be the picture perfect sisters, but we're no longer standing on opposite sides. We're two grown women, both changed, both still learning, and to me, that's more than enough to close one chapter and quietly begin the next.